You hear a dull thud. Not loud, not dramatic, the kind of sound that might go unnoticed anywhere else, like something falling in a distant room. But this isn't a house. It's space. There are no distant rooms. There is nothing beyond this capsule, and any sound that shouldn't exist already means something is wrong. Your eyes go straight to the instruments almost before any thought can form. Some numbers don't make sense. A light starts blinking where it shouldn't, another follows right after, and before any question fully takes shape, the answer begins to show itself across the panels. Oxygen pressure dropping, voltage unstable, a system that should be in the green now shifting between yellow and red, too fast. Training kicks in automatically, but it doesn't cover this exact moment when everything still feels under control and, at the same time, already isn't, when it becomes clear the problem isn't going to fix itself. If you made it this far, you were inside Apollo 13 when everything started to fail. Subscribe for more stories like this. Jim Lovell, 42 years old, more than 5,000 flight hours logged, 2 space missions behind him, now sitting in the command seat of Apollo 13, over 300,000 kilometers from Earth. The mission was supposed to be routine, at least within what can be called routine when traveling toward the moon inside a capsule the size of a small car. Something already experienced before, the silence of space is familiar, the way the body loses its weight as well, just like the control panels after 20 hours of flight, every light, every reading, every system pattern known like something seen countless times, everything working exactly as it should. It is April 13th, 1970. Apollo 13 is 56 hours into the mission, and everything is going well. So well that mission control in Houston has started to ease the pace of checks. Jack Swigert and Fred Hayes are positioned throughout the command module, each at their station, each doing exactly what they were trained to do. The atmosphere inside the capsule is one of quiet focus. That functional silence between professionals who don't need to speak to coordinate. The instruments are monitored, numbers logged, updates transmitted to Houston. Everything within expected limits, too stable to raise any concern. Outside, space is completely black and completely silent, something that stopped feeling like a threat long ago and became just the environment where the work happens. Through the windows there is only darkness, broken by distant, unmoving points of light that are stars, and the white and blue curve of Earth growing smaller as the spacecraft moves forward, almost beautiful, in a way that no longer needs to be described, only felt far too distant for any immediate help. Houston requests a routine check, stir the oxygen tanks, a standard procedure, automatic, like fastening a seatbelt before starting a car. Swigert flips the switch, the tanks respond, and then, before there is time to register what just happened, the sound comes. A thud, dull, singular, as if something had shifted into the wrong place within the walls of the spacecraft. Not a bang, not an explosion, not the kind of thing seen in movies, almost too subtle to be alarming. But something is noticed even before looking at the panels, not in the sound, not in the vibration, but in something harder to define. The quality of the air inside the capsule, the sense of stability, the quiet certainty that everything is working, beginning to fail. Your eyes move to the instruments, and the instruments seem to answer back with numbers that don't add up. The first thing that stands out is the pressure in oxygen tank number 2. It's dropping, not slowly, not like a small leak that might stabilize, but in a steady decline, the kind that doesn't look like it's going to stop. The number gets checked, a blink, checked again, and it keeps falling. Next to it, the voltage in one of the electrical panels starts to fluctuate as well, rising and falling in small, irregular pulses that don't match any pattern seen before, and a lot of patterns have been seen on these screens. This isn't one of them. Hayes is in the lunar module section, running checks on his systems. When the call goes through the intercom, his voice comes back calm, but there's something in the tone that gives it away. He's starting to run the same calculations. Swigert is already at the controls, trying to figure out if the issue is in the sensor or the system itself. A critical difference. A faulty sensor is an inconvenience. A failing system is something else entirely, and the next few minutes will decide which one it is, while the effort is to keep interpretation from getting ahead of the data. Houston comes on the loop, the information is relayed, system fluctuations, inconsistent readings, the thud everyone heard. The voice on the other side stays procedural, asking the right questions, processing the answers. But in the small pauses between each exchange, it becomes clear they are trying to understand it too. And when both sides of a conversation are trying to figure out the same problem at the same time, the silence between words starts to carry weight. Tank number 2 now reads 0, no longer dropping, just 0, completely empty or completely unreadable, still impossible to tell. And while that is being processed, Tank number 1 starts to drop as well, and the question of sensor versus system answers itself in a way that's too clear to ignore. 2 different sensors, 2 different tanks, both failing at the same time. Coincidences don't usually work like that. There's a moment where the breath is held without noticing, not exactly fear, more like the way it happens when trying to identify a distant sound. Something about intense focus suspends everything else for a second. The air is released slowly, the numbers checked again, and then the conclusion settles in. The spacecraft is losing oxygen, not a sensor, not a bad reading, actual oxygen escaping from somewhere it shouldn't. Houston confirms what's being seen, and then comes the sentence that changes everything, delivered with the same calm tone used for a routine correction. The lunar mission is aborted, and the impact isn't the loss of the moon, not in that moment, the weight is in what it implies. If the mission is being called off, it means the problem is serious enough to justify it, and not even half of what's wrong is fully understood yet. There's a small window in the command module, and your gaze drifts toward it without planning to. What comes into view turns the abstraction of numbers into something physical and irreversible. A white mist spreading slowly into space around the spacecraft, visible against the absolute black like smoke in slow motion. It's oxygen escaping from a point that still hasn't been located, dispersing into the vacuum with an almost indifferent elegance. The gaze stays there for maybe 2 seconds before returning to the controls, because looking doesn't fix anything, and because it's necessary not to process what was just seen beyond what's needed for the next decision. The next decision is to move into the lunar module. Aquarius, as it's called, was meant to land on the surface of the moon. Now it becomes the lifeboat. The transfer procedure begins with haze, systems being powered up in the lunar module while the command module is gradually shut down to preserve energy. Every system turned off is a loss. Every light going dark on the main panel is an option disappearing. Survival starts being built by dismantling the mission itself. Aquarius was designed for 2 astronauts for 45 hours. Now it has to support 3 for 90. The life support numbers were never meant for this, and that's already clear without needing confirmation. Oxygen margins are tight, power margins even tighter, and the temperature begins to drop as soon as the command module's heating systems are shut down. The immediate problem is exchanged for a sequence of smaller ones, at least manageable, at least for now. Houston is now working in 2 teams, something that can be felt in the frequency of transmissions, in the rhythm of the questions, in the way information moves back and forth. Hundreds of people on Earth trying to find a solution that can bring the crew back. An idea that is both reassuring and disorienting, because the distance is 300,000 kilometers, and anything they figure out takes time to reach the spacecraft, and time is exactly what there isn't enough of. The temperature inside the module starts to drop, first at the fingertips, then in the shoulders. Aquarius was never designed to retain heat the same way the command module did. And with systems running at the bare minimum, the cold settles in slowly, steadily, more uncomfortable than frightening at first. The body moves to generate warmth. Instruments are still being monitored with eyes that are starting to feel heavier, because sleep will be necessary at some point, and the idea of resting, while everything is running on the edge, demands a kind of trust that is still being built. For a moment, Marilyn comes to mind, not for long, just enough for the image to exist before being set aside again. There's a kind of emotional control in missions like this that no manual ever explains, but every astronaut learns in practice. Feeling is inevitable, letting it interfere isn't an option, and then the focus returns to the panels. The carbon dioxide problem arrives like a cruel joke. There is enough oxygen to breathe, but the air being exhaled isn't being filtered properly. The square filters from the command module don't fit into the round connections of the lunar module, and without filtration, CO2 will build up until breathing becomes just as dangerous as not breathing. Houston comes in with a solution that, in any other situation, would almost sound absurd. Build an adapter using plastic bags, cardboard, tape, and socks, whatever is available on board, whatever can be improvised inside a spacecraft 250,000 kilometers from Earth. The adapter starts being assembled following instructions coming over the radio, step by step, with the precision of someone who knows there's no margin for error. Hayes holds the pieces, Swigert reads the instructions out loud, and everything is put together with the focus of a surgeon, except the operating room is a capsule at 6 degrees below zero, and the patient is the very air that will be breathed in the next hours. When the final piece is fitted and the filter begins to work, there is no open celebration, just a subtle release of tension, the kind of relief that only shows up after a pressure that wasn't even fully noticed. Then comes the return burn. To make it back, the spacecraft has to execute a precise maneuver using the lunar module engine, an engine designed to land on the moon, not to correct trajectories in deep space. calculations are done manually because computers are conserving power, the spacecraft is aligned using the stars and Earth as reference, everything depending on mental calculations done with cold hands and growing fatigue. Houston sends the numbers, they are confirmed, entered, and the spacecraft is positioned. The burn lasts 4 minutes and 23 seconds, the count runs in the background while the engine fires, vibration is felt through the soles of the feet, the instruments are watched in a state of focus that sits right on the edge of control. Every second with the correct numbers is another second of margin between making it back or not. When the engine cuts off, the trajectory is correct, the re-entry window exists, small, precise, but real. The hours that follow are the longest ones lived. The cold doesn't ease. It reaches the point where breath becomes visible inside the capsule. Moisture gathers on surfaces, forming droplets across panels and windows, turning the interior into something closer to a damp, cold enclosure than a high-tech spacecraft. Water is rationed, food is barely touched. Rest is attempted but never fully achieved, because the body doesn't relax when everything is still operating on the edge. At 140,000 kilometers from Earth, it is now large enough in the windows to reveal the curvature of continents. And for the first time in days, looking outside doesn't bring the image of loss, but something close to hope. The gaze lingers a second longer, and for a brief, controlled moment, there is permission to believe it might work. The service module separates first, and through the window it finally becomes possible to see what exploded. An entire panel along the side of the spacecraft is gone, torn open like a wound in the metal, and the observation comes with the calm of someone already past the worst of it. It's oxygen tank number 2, or what remains of it. The explosion wasn't cinematic, it wasn't visually dramatic. It was simply destructive in the exact way needed to compromise everything that depended on that system. The damage is photographed for the engineers in Houston, and then the gaze moves away from the window. Re-entry is the quietest moment of the entire mission. During those minutes, the plasma surrounding the capsule cuts off all communication, and the radio blackout isolates everything completely. No Houston, no confirmation, no human voice on the other side of the loop that had been the only connection to Earth for days. Just Lovell, Swigert, haze, the rising heat along the walls, and the acceleration forcing everything back into gravity. The silence holds because there is nothing to say. When radio contact returns, Houston's voice comes back as if it had never left. Calm, professional, present, position is confirmed. Systems as well, parachutes deploy in sequence. The impact with the ocean is hard but controlled, and then the capsule is floating in the Pacific, and being alive takes on a meaning the word rarely carries. Divers arrive, the hatch opens, stepping out happens almost automatically. Sunlight hits after days inside a cold, damp capsule under artificial light. Almost too intense for a moment, the warmth, the weight of the body returning, the horizon no longer a panel but something real. The body settles onto the deck of the recovery ship, and the air is pulled in deeply, carrying the smell of sea, fuel, and something close to normal, a normal that had almost been forgotten. Later, when the questions come, the one that always comes follows with it. Whether the mission was a failure, the answer takes a second, not out of uncertainty, but because it doesn't fit into a single sentence. Apollo 13 did not land on the moon, did not accomplish what it was meant to do, but it brought 3 men back from a situation no manual said was survivable, and that, depending on how it's seen, is a kind of absolute success, the kind that simply means continuing. 3 trips into space, no steps on the moon, but surviving Apollo 13 becomes the story that remains, not by choice, but because that's how it unfolded, and because sometimes the story that matters isn't the one planned, but the one lived through and still able to be told.